Hello there. Welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I'm going to take a deep dive look into Willow Episode 7 titled Beyond the Shattered Sea. Before we get started, I'm inviting you to join the conversation with us. We can be found on Twitter and Hive at Force Ghost Pod. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok just by searching Force Ghost Conversations. We look forward to connecting with you on those platforms. Also, please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your listening site of choice. Finally, please be sure to check out our TeePublic store to buy some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. Okay, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Force Ghost Conversations, and I am so thrilled to be talking about this week's episode of Willow. I mean, come on now, what a great penultimate episode for this season, and how can I really wait a couple more days for the season finale? And I'm hoping that it is just the season finale, not a series finale. I need a second season of this show as soon as possible. Lucasfilm, if you're listening to this podcast, get working on that right away. This series is spectacular, and if you're not watching it yet, get on that as soon as possible. Before we get into that deep dive discussion, I want to run through the Star Wars Lucasfilm news that transpired this week, and I also have a story to share with you all, just because it is in league with what we are discussing on the podcast today. So let's get into all of that in our Cloud City Gossip segment. And reeling out of the new year, folks, we still do not have a whole lot of concrete Star Wars, Lucasfilm, Indiana Jones, Willow news at this point. There's a lot of rumors circulating about, but nothing is concrete at this point. However, the only concrete thing that I can really share with you all, and I'm really excited that I get to finally share this version of the news, is that Bad Batch Season 2 is now available on Disney Plus, or at least the first 2 episodes of the season are available at this moment. So, what are you doing? Go watch those 2 episodes now. They're really great. And guess what? You know it already. We're going to be talking about it here on Force Ghost Conversations in our episode coming out next Wednesday. So get excited for that. Mrs. Force Ghost Conversations, Elise King, back by popular demand, will be on those podcast episodes all throughout the season, breaking down the Bad Batch, as that is her favorite Star Wars. And we are so thrilled to have her and her analysis on this show. So that is really all the news that we had for this week, folks. But I did want to share a fun story with you all as it relates to Willow. So, those of you that may know about me in my personal life, I am a music connoisseur of all different types, mostly heavy metal music, but I also collect movie, film score soundtracks. And the Willow soundtrack has been eluding me for quite some time. I've been searching on eBay regularly for several years now to find this soundtrack, and I've lost many a bidding war for Willow on vinyl format. Recently, I saw a couple months ago, I should say recently, I saw the cassette tape of Willow up here on eBay, and it was sealed, right? So this is an exactly sealed copy from the original release of this back in the late 80s. So it was at a price that was way too high for what I would have liked to spend. But the other day, I kind of just got on a whim, and I saw you could make a best off, make an offer on it. So I kind of asked for the price that I was willing to pay for that cassette, and they accepted it. So yesterday, the tape finally arrived. At the time of this recording, the tape arrived, and I played it. And of course, when I played it, the tape, the cohesive glue that keeps it together split apart at the beginning, because I guess it's that old or whatever, like it corroded through or something like that. So I literally spent a good part of the evening tonight splicing up some old cassette tape literally together. And then, I took apart the entire cassette tape. I fiddled with the tape and literally got some scotch tape and put it together again and work and put in my cassette tape player, and it sounds perfect. It plays great. It's literally brand new out of the box at this point, and it is really a fun thing. So just imagine, even 40 years later, or years beyond past the height of the cassette tape empire, I guess. And maybe it never really was an empire, but beyond its being a very valid, popular form of media consumption, uh, Anthony King, was fiddling with that in the year of 2023 on a Saturday night. So that was the fun story that I wanted to share with you all. If you want to hear a snippet of the Willow cassette tape, I did do a little recording of its playing of the Willow theme, which is now available on some of our social media channels. So go check it out. I believe it's on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And with that, folks, on the other side of this short break, we'll be back with our discussion about Willow Episode 7. Stay tuned. All right, everyone. Thanks for waiting and for joining us again for another installment of Forest Ghost Conversations. And really, this is Willow Conversations in many regards. I am so thrilled to get into this episode. This is really just a spectacular episode. There's no really other better way to describe it. I mean, all the episodes have been really great to this point. I still think that maybe episode 4, The Whispers of Nockmar, may be my favorite, but this is a really close budding number 2. And I know I said that last week about episode 6, and episode 5 was really up there too. Frankly, all this stuff is just fantastic. But really, this episode just drives down the point of what it means to be a part of this team, stepping up when it matters the most. It's really about this group facing one last final test to get over the hump, to get them where they need to be, where all hope is lost. Where do they find that hope, that inspiration, that leadership, the sacrifice needed to get there? All that is tackled literally within this episode. Spoiler warning for all of those at home that have not seen Willow episode 7, Beyond the Shattered Sea. If you haven't watched it yet, what are you doing? Again, I implore you, go pause this episode now, go to Disney Plus, watch this episode, and then come right back to this moment so that we can literally delight in the goodness of all that is Willow in this moment in time. You've been forewarned. I'm not holding back from any spoiler discussions at this point. So let's start at the beginning. This episode is directed by Jamie Childs and was written by a group including Julia Cooperman and Bob Dolman, as well as Jonathan Kasdan. And it starts off in the Immemorial City. And it really kind of goes off of the cliffhanger from last week's episode. Who's this girl that's with Eric? And he obviously doesn't seem to take too long to let her out of this cage. I mean, come on now. Uh, it's literally his greatest weakness is women, as far as I can tell. He seems to be a lover of women and a charmer and all that. And before you know, Laura, or what he knows as Dove, came into his life, it seemed like he was kind of a running around all of Tirasleen chasing women kind of thing. But what is her deal? There's a lot of questions at the beginning of the episode about who this person is. Why is she in the Immemorial City? My mind immediately goes to that it's some sort of temptation, right? This is too good to be true. Um, this is exactly the type of pitfall that Eric would use in order to fall into or succumb to the wills of the crone and the Order of the Worm. So is she the crone? I mean, that's a fair question to ask at this point. She very well may be. We hear the word the withered crone, and we immediately probably think of some monstrous creature, right? Something that looks similar to the Gales, the Scourge, the Dag, uh, the Lish, right? The Doom, all those villainous creatures that we see in this series already. But we haven't seen the crow really in full form, and maybe this is a um, the crone taking on a different persona or something like that to really add to that temptation fruit that is being dabbled right in front of Eric here. But accordingly, from what she says, that she is from Kashmir and she's not a huge fan of Eric overall to start. She kind of can see right through his act and what he normally does, playing off of the tropes that you usually get from a fantasy character of that sort. But what we really get from there is kind of tying into the other cliffhanger from the last episode, which is Kit falling through the ice in whatever that deal is, the vermiscous goo, whatever water thing. It seems that the pool of water that Eric's been drinking from is a direct portal in a way to where Kit was trapped. And he hears her, he can see her, he jumps in after her, and he's literally just about to grab Kit before Elora eventually utilizes her magic to pull her out of that space. And at that point, you gotta wonder, like, what's the deal with Kit at this point? It doesn't seem to affect her too much. So if it is vermiscous goo, it's hard. And that's kind of a lingering question I've got right now at this point. And it seems that Eric's been drinking it too, so he's not really corrupted yet at this point either, which maybe we'll see later on. So I don't really know how the why of it all or the how of it all works at this point. But we're off to the races at this point. We're off to the Shattered Sea, folks. And this point of the episode is literally as far into the known world as any of them have ever been or could be, frankly. It's this part of the episode really represents, like I mentioned in the beginning, the final test of this group. And they have to go across this literally together. They have to walk across this, as Willow says, in order to get to the immemorial city. But they have to do it together. I think that's a big point that doesn't get maybe hasn't been focused on, maybe in the episode or in discussions I've seen online. But they get to do it together, and I think that's really powerful. Did anyone notice Alora's hair? It's turning red, folks. The white, the blonde dye that they've been using to dye her hair over the years is certainly wearing off fast. And the fact that she's getting more powerful with her magic as her hair changes her again, I think that's really transformative. That it's a metaphor in a way. It's so interesting to note that. But it really does stand out in this episode for sure. I mean, you can maybe see hints of it in the other preceding episodes, but there's no denying that she's got red hair in this episode. That's for sure. Now, the group does need some rest and ends up in a house or kind of inn of an elderly man on the edge of the Shattered Sea. And the actor is none other than Julian Glover, a notable Lucasfilm alumnus. You may recall seeing Julian Glover in other franchises of the Lucasfilm property family, including Star Wars and Indiana Jones. He in Star Wars is General Veers, who leads the ground attack of AT-ATs on Hoth, most notably in Empire Strikes Back. Additionally, he plays Walter Donovan, the main villain of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So now, he's hit the trifecta of Lucasfilm properties. He's not the first and only person to do this yet, but add that to a very small number of people that can say that they've done all of that. So that's really cool. Maybe there's a chance to get Harrison Ford involved with Willow in some way in the future. Probably not. That's probably shooting for lost hope there, but you never know. You could easily just see that and maybe want to be a part of the competition and add his name to that very illustrious company. But the character's name is Zeb, and he is a little on the interesting side of things for sure. And that's frankly putting it nicely. He's got a mudmander who pulls a sleigh, which is eventually how the team will traverse on the Shattered Sea. And evidently, from his backstory that he shares, it's kind of all over the place. His mind's not really all there, probably from his time wandering the Shattered Sea, and it probably messed with him if you ask me. He's from Kashmir. He was a paladin in basically a past life at this point. And Zeb was originally sent after a past love, a princess of Kashmir, who was captured by servants of a dark power. This just sounds similar to Eric, folks. I mean, that must be the girl that he is with. That being Eric, right? That is the person that he's met. She's already said she's from Kashmir. She'll say later on in the episode that she's a princess. So you got to think at this point that that's exactly who he's referencing here in that story. And speaking of her, she does try to lure Eric into a dark path with sorcerers saying whisperous things. And I definitely believe that she is tempting Eric. She seems to know a lot about the Order of the Worm and their doings, and she basically confirms that again, that she was a princess taken from Kashmir, the same princess that is this in the story that Zeb is sharing. But she's youthful, right? So maybe she's utilizing some dark magic to transform her body or to uh, give herself unnatural youth in a way. Hard to say, but the romantic tension between both Eric and her continues to grow. Back with the main gang, it turns out that the Dag, one of the members of the Gales, later on in the episode tries to deceive the group by posing as Zeb. Graydon sees through this mystery and knocks the Dag down as they escape on the sleigh of the Mudmander. Now, the Dag and the Doom do follow suit, but both members of the Gales. And Kit takes a pretty good hit by a throwing star, which is painful to be sure, but the actress does a great job in that sequence. I'll tell you. Um, and it turns out that Graydon even has some magic abilities now too. My initial thought on that one is perhaps that he caught some of that, that ability from Alora when they had their moment in Nakmar, and he takes out the Dag, and Jade stabs the Doom, pushing him off the sleigh. And Alora sees a vision of the future, though, before the Doom goes off. And it confirms that the Crow is coming after her, and she sees basically the vision that Willow is haunted by in many regards. And somehow, the group finds their way to some little island in this middle of the Shattered Sea here to rest. The Mermander is named Kenneth by Graydon, which I thought was a fun little cute name there. He's doing it. Apparently, he's writing some romantic fluke novel that is kind of based off of this quest a little bit. And Kenneth is one of the characters in that. And that's where the name came from. So that's fun. And his flute evidently was the conjugate for utilizing the magic, though. However, as Willow notes, it comes from within. So that is something that Graydon, through belief in self and self discovery over the course of this tale, has been able to find within himself the true magic. The journey was finding the self for him. And I believe that's powerful. It's basically what happens in the original Willow film. Well, the great belief in yourself can make you all the world powerful and defeat all this great evil around you. It's incredible. Now, in this episode, I will say that this next sequence is really spectacular and magical in many regards. Willow trains Alora in this fantastic montage sequence. Kit and Jade too join in on the action, and frankly, this work is some of the best in the series. We're talking the lighting, the cinematography, the effects, the magic, the tension, the drama. It all works for me. It's great too to see Willow as a caring and honest teacher here, pushing Alora and trying to get her to accept everything about herself, to believe in herself, to face all the evil that she can, or the demons within her, and be proud of and stand up tall as who she is. Right? I think that's really what he's trying to do. And for those who are curious, the song that plays during the training montage is called "For the Glory" by Ken Palo. Graydon too gets involved in the training, and I like that. I'm sure that he's loving having the extra time alone with Alora too. Uh, and really, come on now, this is some of the greatest stuff here is the romance between Kit and Jade, and when they had continued their fighting and training sequence together, and that's been one of the real highlights of the series for me, especially when Jade is like, or Kit says first, "I love you," and then Jade says in response, "Well, shut up and do something about it." God, I just loved it. Again, I paused the episode. I looked right at Mrs. Forsco's conversations that we're watching together, and I said, "That's one of those things from your books again. That's just really great translation of modern fantasy into this story." Willow keeps pushing Alora again to accept all facets of herself, to dig deeper, to look more inward. However, she uses a narcotic spell. Sorry, pancotic, I think is maybe how it's pronounced. I was struggling with that one, but she basically uses an evil spell, the work that the Order of the Worm and the Crone uses on Willow, and it's a temptation, frankly, from the Crone to put Alora into a false state of power. I think we'll see if that plays off later on, but that's kind of where I'm thinking on that front there. So the story transitions a little bit back to the immemorial city, and the Princess of Kashmir finally makes a move to kiss Eric. But he although they kiss for a second, he's really not buying any of that. He doesn't want that. He rejects her. He remembers Dove and his commitment to her, who we know is as Laura Dannon. She shares that she has been here for some time, though, the girl. And I definitely think that this was the princess from the story at this point. Eric dissects, though, that she is the one that had brought him into the city. So does that make her the crone? I'm kind of leaning towards yes, but let's keep investigating. Eric does eventually, though, succumb to the temptation and drinks the water that's inside this palace space, which I believe turns him into a servant of the worm, the crone, whatever they are. And I don't know. I'm sure this will all be explained in the next episode. So if you have any outstanding questions about all this stuff and how this is working or what this means for the lore and all that, just kind of, put a pin on that one. We'll come back to it, and it'll probably be explained in more grander detail in the season finale next week. Now, for the group though, the point of this episode really is that their resolve is being tested here. The longer they're on this journey, and the further they get from home, the harder that everything gets. And this episode is absolutely stunning, in terms of like the cinematography of it all and what they're putting on the screen here. I just have to give a big shout out to that shot of the stars in the sky as they're having these grand conversations and how it reflects off the water. It is just, chef's kiss. Really beautiful, really brilliant, if you ask me. I thought that Willow having these real struggling moments in this episode was really powerful. His sharing of what happens, something happened to Kaya, his wife, while he was on the first adventure from the movie. And we're not sure exactly yet as to what happened. We've been had questions about maybe where Kaya was from the beginning of the series, and something certainly bad happened to her while he's off on this grand adventure. His son blames him for what happened and goes away. And Mims, frankly, is all that Willow has left in terms of his family at this point, which I'm sure has been weighing on him, right? Let alone just being Willow of Good, Sorcerer Supreme who brought down Bavmorda. That's hard enough on a person, but then to lose your family while you're on that grand quest and to always be reminded of that's got to weigh on a person. That doesn't matter how strong you are. Like eventually, that's gonna that's gonna break through something there. Graydon also let Kenneth go, the Mudmander, and that doesn't bode well for the group's morale, especially how they need to walk as a result of that. But as we mentioned in the beginning, they have to literally walk on foot if they want to make it to the Memorial City. And I will say I do love that heartwarming scene by Graydon and Alora. Although he knows that she doesn't really love him in the way that he loves her and may never do so, he's open to admit that he is a better person and the man that he wanted to be because he knew her and was on this adventure with her. That is amazing character growth, ladies and gentlemen, and maturity from the cowardly boy that we saw in the first episode. Really great stuff there overall. So we get to basically the end of the episode here. And the Shattered Sea is basically a cliff. it literally ends at a cliff. If you're talking real cliffhanger here, that's basically it in a physical sense. Alora believes that the immemorial city is still beyond this space, even though Willow's like, I'm turning back home. Borman's about done with it all. I don't think Jade is really believe in all this. But the trust that Alora and Kit having this moment is just beautiful to me. And what character journey that they have shared together through all this. Alora reveals that she knows her fate as prophesied by Willow, but Kit overall stands up in this moment and is the real hero that everyone needed and is brave. She is inspiring as the group needed someone to step up and be a leader. She says this really excellent line: "My fear, it doesn't get to decide. It doesn't get to define me. I'm not giving it that power. I'm giving it to you," in terms of giving that power to Alora. That's astounding. What a great delivery, too, of those lines by the actress. I believe it's Ruby Cruz. I believed every word that she said, and I was about ready to go jumping off that cliff with her, too. Between that, the direction, the writing of it all, this is really a climactic moment of the episode. She said exactly what needed to be said when the group was literally as low as it could be. And as a result, Alora and Kit take a leap of faith together. I mean, improbable from the beginning of this series, where they ended up to over the course of these 7 episodes, where nothing is left on the table at this point. They've finally faced all of their fears. They've conquered everything together as a group. They've shared memories, they've shared stories, they've shared laughs. They've shared their fears and traumas and insecurities. And now all they have to do is just complete this quest. So they jump into the waterfall together, leading them to the immemorial city. And something that I said immediately from the start here is, I'm surprised that the rest of the group didn't just follow after them. I mean, what's the deal there, folks? I kind of expected all the rest of them to be just tumbling down afterwards, but we don't see that on camera. I hope that appears immediately in episode 8 at the beginning of that. So that's kind of my hopes there, because that would be kind of uh, hard for the rest of the group to not be a part of all this, but we'll see how it all plays out. But so they actually make it to the immemorial city, and who do they find at the gates of the city palace, though? None other than a corrupted Eric, who is sporting, by the way, a new haircut, and he's looking pretty fine, if you ask me. He's ready to fight on behalf of the Withered Crone and the Order of the Worm. And I find it fascinating, frankly, that Eric is literally the last, the final boss that we're presented with, right? If that's the cliffhanger leading into the final episode of this season, he is the big bad, the last boss that they have to overcome here. Uh, Literally, the person who the entire journey, like the impetus for this journey, this quest, this adventure is the thing that they must overcome and kind of defeat in a way, which is really, really interesting. It's fascinating. They have to face, they each have their reasons for facing this person that they love in some capacity, right? Alora in a romantic way, and Kit is her, she's his, that's her brother, right? They have a familial love with each other, a familial relationship. It's horribly tragic. Which leads into the ironic song at the end credits, which is "Wanted Man." I'm a Wanted Man by Royal Deluxe, which again makes sense. The wanted man is Eric, but I don't know if he wants to come home at this point. He's certainly corrupted. He's enacting. He doesn't seem like he's on the side of good at this point anymore. He gave into the temptation. He was seduced by this power, by the ability to maybe go home if he did something bad, or drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak. And we'll see how this all plays out. We're heading to the climactic final story of season 1 of Willow. And I hope that you all are just so enthralled with this story as much as I am. How literally can we wait a few more days for this episode? And I'm just so sad that the series will be Well, I'm not saying the series, but the season will be over. What am I going to do? I'm going to just rewatch it constantly again. It was so great to be back in this world, ladies and gentlemen, and to have this adventure with these kids and seeing our favorite heroes from the original film again, and just having more time in Mother World, this great land and universe that George Lucas helped to create and Ron Howard put into the original film. It's just magical and powerful, if you ask me. What are you thinking of this episode, folks? I really, really, really want to hear your thoughts on this one. I know that we've gotten a lot of. I posed the question on our social media channels on Saturday today when I'm recording this about what's your favorite episode of Willow to this point, and a lot of people said episode 7. And I want to know why. Tell me why. Hit us up on all of our social media channels, Twitter, Hive, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. Let's talk about Willow. Let's keep the conversations going, and let's just have fun doing it. But guess what? Star Wars is here too, folks. We are going to talk all about Bad Batch in our next episode. The first 2 episodes of season 2 are already out, and from the beginning of this episode that Mrs. Forrest's Conversations, Elise King, will be joining us throughout the season as we have fun talking about all that stuff over the course of the next couple of months. So with that, folks, I am so thrilled to continue these conversations with you all. It's great to have Star Wars back in our TV screens each and every week. And thank you again for coming along the great journey that has been Force Ghost Conversations as we head into the new year. Because we've got a lot coming down the way, and don't want to spoil a whole lot of stuff for you, but we got some great things coming down the pipeline that I'm looking at my episodes list above me here that I think you're going to enjoy a lot. So with that, yeah, check us out on all of our social media channels, folks. Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Hive. Just search Force Ghost Conversations and you'll probably find us very easily in some capacity. If you're feeling so inclined, leave us a rating, subscribe to the channel on your favorite podcast site. And if you can, tell your friends about us. If they love Star Wars, Willow, Indiana Jones, this is the place to be for all those deep dive discussions, and in a cozy, friendly manner, right? I think that's really important to what we do here at Force Ghost Conversations. So if there's people that are fans of all that stuff and love having fun, cozy conversations about it, tell them about Force Ghost Conversations, and let's continue to grow the seats around the proverbial campfire that is this podcast. Also, if you're feeling so inclined, check out our TeePublic store to get some Force Ghost Conversations merchandise. We have both our Star Wars inspired logo and our Willow logo on the site. So that is really a great place to go and get a t-shirt and wear it around town. Or if you want a hoodie, wear it to the movie theater, do that too. Or if you want a phone case, they got all kinds of stuff on that site, and they run sales frequently. So be sure to check out TeePublic for all your Force Ghost Conversations merchandising needs. And with that, folks, that is all that I had for this episode. Be sure to check out our next episode on Wednesday, all about the Bad Batch, first 2 episodes of season 2. So you definitely don't want to miss that. And we'll be back on your podcast feeds as soon as you can probably say Bad Batch. So with that, folks, get ready for all of that. And we're going to have a lot of fun stuff coming down the way. So until then, may the Force be with you. Take care.